A camera revealed my mom's secret dream. I never thought that an old camera for $20 would change everything I knew about my mother. But that's exactly what happened on that Saturday morning in October, when I stopped by a storage unit sale on the outskirts of our town in Oregon. I've always been a practical person. At 35, I worked as a librarian in the same library where my mom once worked, lived a steady life, never really got into collecting or antiques. But something about this vintage Canon AE1 caught my eye from the moment I saw it. The camera was sitting on a worn blanket among other items, old books, vinyl records, tarnished jewelry. It stood out with its solid build, quality metal body that had kept its noble shine even after all these years. The seller, a thin woman in her 40s with tired eyes, explained that the camera had belonged to photographer David Harris. David had died 6 months ago at 72, leaving no family except a daughter who lived in California. The daughter couldn't come right away, so things had piled up in storage until the rent ran out. Now everything was being sold for next to nothing. The camera was heavy, obviously expensive once. Small scratches were visible on the body, signs of active use, but that only added character. For $20, it was a real find. Even if the camera didn't work, I could put it on a shelf as interesting decor. At home, I examined my purchase carefully. The Canon was in excellent condition. All mechanisms worked smoothly. And that's when I noticed there was film inside. The frame counter showed 36 shots had been taken, a full roll. My first thought was to throw the film away. After so many years, it was probably ruined, and even if not, the photos belonged to strangers, to someone else's memories. But curiosity was stronger than reason. What if there was something interesting on the film? Historical shots? Family moments I could return to the photographer's relatives? On Monday, I took the film to the only photo lab left in town. The young guy behind the counter rolled the old film in his hands and warned me that after such long storage, the quality might be poor. The images might not develop at all, but I insisted on developing it. The next 2 days dragged unbearably slowly. I kept thinking about that film, imagining different scenarios of what might be in the photos. Maybe work shots from some project, maybe a family celebration, maybe just landscapes. Wednesday evening, the lab called. The film had developed well. Quality was excellent. I could pick up the photos. I rushed there right after work, my heart pounding with anticipation. The envelope with photos was thick, meaning almost all the frames had turned out. I looked through the first shots right there in the car, in the lab's parking lot, and the world around me stopped. The photographs showed a young woman of incredible beauty. These were professional studio shots, perfect lighting, thoughtful composition, flawless quality. The woman posed in different outfits, sometimes in an elegant black dress, sometimes in a vintage business suit, sometimes in some historical outfit with a corset and long skirt. In each shot, she looked like a real actress or model. Expressive eyes, refined facial features, graceful movements. Her pose and gaze changed from photo to photo, sometimes dreamy and romantic, sometimes bold and confident, sometimes tragic and deep. At first, I thought this was just a very beautiful stranger from the 80s, judging by the style of the photos and hairstyles. Maybe a beginning actress who was making a portfolio with David Harris, but something about her facial features seemed vaguely familiar. I continued flipping through the shots, more and more mesmerized by this mysterious woman. And then, in one of the last frames, I noticed a detail that made my heart stop. Around the woman's neck was a necklace, an elegant gold chain with a large emerald in an antique setting, surrounded by small diamonds. I knew this necklace. It had been sitting in my mom's jewelry box for as long as I could remember. Mom never wore it. When I asked as a child why she didn't put on such a beautiful piece, Mom would answer that it was too expensive and flashy for ordinary days, and special occasions somehow never came up. She said the necklace had come from her grandmother, but something in her voice always sounded uncertain. But could this glamorous, sophisticated woman in the photographs really be my mom? I pulled out my phone and in the screen's light began carefully studying the woman's facial features in the shots. Gradually, through the professional makeup, elegant hairstyle, and theatrical pose, familiar lines began to emerge. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her eyebrows, the line of her lips. Oh my God, this really was Mom. Only incredibly young, about 25, and completely unlike the woman I had known all my life. My hands were shaking as I went through the photographs again and again. In each shot, I saw a completely different woman. Not the modest librarian in a cardigan and simple skirt, but a confident beauty who clearly felt comfortable in front of the camera. Mom had always been beautiful, even in her 50s when she died 2 years ago from cancer. But in our family photos, she looked like an ordinary housewife. Modest clothes, minimal makeup, simple hairstyles. She preferred to stay in the background, letting Dad and me be the center of attention. But here was a woman who clearly loved being the center of attention. Bold, confident, glowing with some inner light. Every pose, every look spoke of someone who knew her worth. I sat in the car trying to reconcile these two images in my head. How could my quiet, domestic mom have been this dazzling woman? And most importantly, why had she never told me about this? At home, I got out all our family albums and started comparing. The earliest photos of Mom in our house dated to the late 80s, wedding shots where she already looked more conservative. Before that period, there were only a few childhood photos and shots from school and college. But I had never seen professional portraits of this caliber among Mom's things. Where had she hidden them? And why had she hidden them? Judging by the shooting quality and style, the photographs were taken in the first half of the 80s. This meant they were taken several years before I was born, when Mom was about 25. So Mom had had a whole life before our family that I knew nothing about. That evening, I drove to Dad's house with the photographs. He lived in the same house where Mom and I had spent my entire life, but now alone. After Mom's death 2 years ago, he had aged, though he still taught English at the local school. His reaction to the photographs was strange and telling. Dad looked at the shots for a long time, his face gradually changing. First surprise, then something like nostalgia, and then slight sadness. He sighed deeply and said my mom had been an amazing woman who hadn't told much about her youth. When I started asking specific questions, where these photos were taken, by whom, why, Dad became evasive. He said only that Mom had lived a very interesting and eventful life before they met, but she preferred not to talk about the past. According to him, the past stayed in the past, and he never pressed for details. But that answer wasn't enough for me. These photographs had opened up a whole world I never suspected existed. I wanted to know the truth about my mom, understand who she had been before she became my mother. The next day, I started my own investigation. First, I decided to find that photographer, David Harris, and learn more about these shots. Internet searches gave results pretty quickly. David Harris turned out to be a mid-level theatrical photographer who worked in New York from the late 70s to the early 2000s. He had a small studio and specialized in portraits of beginning actors. Talented, but in a world full of competition, he lacked the pushiness and connections to break through to A-list stars. I found contact information for his daughter, Sophie Harris, who lived in Los Angeles. When I described the found photographs to her, Sophie admitted she didn't recognize the woman from the description. Her father had had many clients over the years, but she became interested herself and suggested we meet so I could look through her father's archives. A week later, I was in New York. Sophie met me at a small cafe in Brooklyn. She turned out to be an energetic woman my age, with short hair and creative mannerisms. Her father's archives were stored in his former studio, a small space packed with boxes of photographs and documents. When I showed Sophie the photos from the camera and told her about Mom, she got interested. She pulled out a folder marked 1983, 1985 and started searching. And there it was, a whole photo set with Mom. Dozens of professional shots, portraits, theatrical poses, shots in different costumes. On the back of one photograph, in the photographer's handwriting, was written, "Lynn Connor, one of the most talented. Too bad she disappeared." In the folder were documents, payment receipts, shooting records. The last entry was dated May 1985. After that, Mom's name wasn't mentioned anywhere. Sophie gave me contacts for the theater where, according to the records, Mom had worked. A small theater in Greenwich Village that still existed today. The next day, I found the administrator there named Frank, an elderly man who had worked at the theater since the late 70s. When I mentioned Mom's name, his eyes lit up with memories. Frank remembered Lynn Connor very well. A talented actress, a kind person, showing great promise. But in spring 1985, tragedy had struck her life. She had been in love with an actor from their company, Michael Wren. The young couple had planned to marry and move to Los Angeles, where Michael had been offered a role in a TV series. But in June 1985, Michael was killed in a car accident. For Mom, this was a terrible blow. A month after the funeral, she came to the theater, gathered her things, and said she couldn't be there anymore. The theater reminded her too much of Michael. Now everything was becoming clear. Mom hadn't just quit her career. She had fled from pain. She couldn't bear to be in a world connected to her lost love. Returning home, I talked to Dad again. This time, he was more open. He told me how they had met in 1987 at the library. Mom had been very withdrawn then, rarely smiled. Dad had immediately understood she was going through some deep pain. He had patiently won her trust. Mom only told him about her theatrical past after a year, when it became clear they had serious feelings for each other. She showed him a few photos and asked him never to talk about it again. Dad had accepted her condition. He could see that memories caused Mom pain. When I was born, Mom finally focused completely on family and found peace in her new role. But now, knowing the truth, I understood that Mom had never completely left theater. She had just transferred her talent to another sphere. I remembered how expressively she read me fairy tales, how she prepared school productions, how she could turn any ordinary day into a small celebration. Mom hadn't abandoned theater. She had changed stages. Instead of an auditorium, she had family and friends. She continued giving people emotions and beauty, just doing it at home. But I needed to know more details. I found Mom's old jewelry box in the attic and examined that emerald necklace more carefully. It was clearly very expensive, antique, with exquisite craftsmanship. This wasn't something you'd buy casually. It was a serious piece of jewelry, the kind given for very special occasions. I also found an old shoebox tucked away behind some Christmas decorations. Inside were a few theater programs from the early 1980s, some newspaper clippings, and what looked like fan mail. My hands trembled as I realized these were remnants of Mom's acting career that she'd kept hidden all these years. The program showed that Mom had performed in several off-Broadway productions between 1983 and 1985. Her name appeared in shows like The Glass Menagerie by Tennessee Williams, Three Sisters by Chekhov, and The Taming of the Shrew by Shakespeare. These weren't small parts. Mom had played leading ladies and important supporting characters. The newspaper reviews were even more impressive. One theater critic wrote, "Young Lynn Connor possesses a rare gift. She can make audiences believe any story she tells on stage. Her acting is natural yet mesmerizingly theatrical. This is an actress who doesn't just play a role, she lives it." Another review was even more glowing. Lynn Connor's performance as Laura in The Glass Menagerie is a lesson in how to portray fragility and strength simultaneously. The actress creates a character of such depth and truth that audiences forget they're in a theater. If Miss Connor continues developing at this pace, we'll see her on Broadway within a few years. There were several interviews with Mom in small theatrical magazines. Reading them, I discovered a completely different person. Mom talked about her love for theater, how she dreamed of playing classical roles, her plans to conquer Broadway. In one 1984 interview, she said, "Theater isn't just a job for me. It's a way to live life fully, explore human nature, tell important stories. Every role teaches me something new about myself and the world. I can't imagine life without the stage." These words sounded so passionate, so convinced. Reading them, I tried to imagine my quiet domestic mom saying such things and couldn't. This was a completely different woman, but the most puzzling thing was that all the materials ended in May 1985. The last program was dated then. The last interview, too. After that, the name Lynn Connor vanished from New York's theatrical chronicles as if she'd never existed. I decided to dig deeper into Mom's past. Back in the storage box, I found something I'd initially overlooked: a small, leather-bound diary. The cover was worn, the pages yellowed with age. My heart raced as I realized this was Mom's personal journal from her acting days. The entry started in 1982, when she'd first arrived in New York after college graduation, and ended abruptly in July 1985. Reading Mom's diary was both painful and fascinating. On these pages, a completely different woman came alive. Young, ambitious, full of plans and hopes. March 15th, 1984. Got the part of Laura in The Glass Menagerie today. This is my first really serious role. The director said I'm perfect for the character. Fragile on the outside, but with inner strength. I'm going to prepare like never before. This is my chance to show what I can do. June 3rd, 1984. Opening night was magnificent. The audience cried during my monologues. After the show, a critic from the Village Voice came up and said it was the best performance of Laura he'd seen in years. I feel like I've finally found my place in life. Then entries about Michael appeared. September 20th, 1984. A new actor joined the company, Michael Wren. He's playing Tom in our show. Very talented, with classical good looks and an amazingly deep understanding of the text. And he has the kindest eyes I've ever seen. October 12th, 1984. Michael asked me for coffee after rehearsal. We talked until 4 in the morning. He told me about his plans, how he sees the theater of the future. I've never met anyone who feels as passionately about art as I do. With him, I feel understood. December 25th, 1984. Best Christmas of my life. Michael gave me a book of Shakespeare's sonnets with an inscription, "To my Juliet, from your Romeo." We're officially a couple, and I can't believe my happiness. It feels like my whole life was preparation for meeting him. The entries became increasingly happy. Mom wrote about their joint plans, about Michael's offer to act in Hollywood, about how they would conquer the art world together. The last happy entry was dated May 28th, 1985. Michael proposed. "We'll marry in August and move to Los Angeles." He got the lead role in a new series, and I'll audition for films. Life is beautiful, and I'm grateful to fate for every day with him. Then came June. The entry from June 15th, 1985 was written in shaky handwriting. "Michael is gone. I don't know how to live on, how to breathe, how to get up in the morning. The world has stopped making sense." The following entries were short and full of pain. Mom wrote about how hard it was to perform on stage when her soul was torn in half, about how every day at the theater reminded her of Michael, about how she could no longer be in a world so closely tied to their shared dreams. The last entry was dated July 30th, 1985. "Today I said goodbye to the theater. I can't anymore. Every role, every scene, it's pain. I'm going far away from here, where no one knows about Michael, where I can start a new life. Maybe someday the pain will dull, but for now I just need to survive." Reading these lines, I cried. My strong, wise mom had once been just a young woman who'd lost the most precious thing in her life. She was only 25 when she decided to start life over in an unfamiliar place. How brave she had been to leave everything, a successful career, friends, familiar life, and go to a small town in Oregon where no one knew her. To find work at the library, rent a small apartment, build a new identity every day on the ruins of her former dream. And she had succeeded. She hadn't just survived, but had become happy again. Found Dad, created a family, had me. Built quiet, peaceful happiness on the site of destroyed passion. But the price had been high. In the box, I found one more thing, that emerald necklace. Now I knew its story. It had been Michael's Christmas gift in 1984. He'd spent all his savings on it because he wanted his future wife to have something truly beautiful. Mom had kept the necklace, but never wore it. It was too painful to see this symbol of lost happiness. But she couldn't throw it away either. It was all that remained of Michael. Now I understood why Mom had never told me about her past. Not from shame or desire to hide something bad, but because these memories still caused pain even decades later. I decided to learn more about Michael. Online, I found information about that tragic accident in June 1985. A short notice in a Newark newspaper. Promising actor Michael Wren killed in collision with truck at intersection of 14th Street and 8th Avenue. He was 27 years old. I found several photos of Michael in theatrical archives. A handsome young man with kind eyes, just as Mom had written in her diary. In one shot, he was with Mom. They were hugging and laughing after some performance. Both so young, so happy, not suspecting that their time together was so limited. I even found a short interview with Michael, published shortly before his death. He talked about the upcoming move to Los Angeles, plans to work in film. And he mentioned his fiancée, talented actress Lynn, who will be a star before I am. Reading this, I cried for people I'd never known. For a young couple, he had a beautiful future, but no time to live it. For dreams that shattered against chance on a city intersection. But at the same time, I admired Mom even more. She had survived such tragedy and hadn't grown bitter, hadn't closed herself off forever, hadn't started avoiding love. 2 years after Michael's death, she'd been able to open her heart to Dad. Dad told me that Mom never compared him to her first fiancé. She loved them differently. Michael passionately, youthfully, and Dad wisely, maturely, with understanding of the value of peaceful happiness. She never made Dad feel like a backup option. But sometimes, especially in the first years of marriage, Dad would see a shadow of sadness in Mom's eyes. When TV showed theatrical performances, when they passed poster boards. When I performed in a school play, Mom would rejoice and be proud, but deep in her eyes was sorrow for what might have been. Gradually, this sadness faded. Motherhood, steady family life, work at the library, all this helped Mom find new meaning in existence. She was happy, but differently, not with the bright passion of youth, but with deep understanding of the value of what she had. Now, knowing the whole story, I reassessed Mom's behavior with new eyes. Her reluctance to go to theaters, which I'd previously attributed to lack of interest. Her strange reaction to my attempts to do acting in school. She supported me, but somehow reservedly. I remember when I was about 14, I got excited about the idea of applying to drama school. Mom listened to my plans and said the acting profession was very difficult, full of disappointments and instability. It would be better to choose something more reliable. Then it seemed to me she just didn't understand my aspirations. Now I understood she was protecting me from the pain she herself had experienced. And yet Mom didn't try to completely shield me from art. She read me books, took me to classical music concerts, encouraged my love of literature. She just directed my interest towards safer channels. After all my discoveries, I started working with the local theater. It turned out our community theater desperately needed help. They had enthusiasm, but lacked experience and knowledge. I offered my services as assistant director. I had no professional training, but I had something else. Memories of how Mom worked with children, how she explained the basics of acting to me. Preparing for the first rehearsal, I reread Mom's diary, studied her notes about working on roles. I tried to understand what made her such a special actress, what methods she used. Gradually, I understood Mom's main secret. She always looked for truth in every role. She didn't try to impress with beautiful acting, but tried to find a living person inside the character. That's why her performance seemed so natural and convincing. The first rehearsal went better than I expected. I told the actors about my mom, showed them several of her photos. Many remembered how Linda Connor, that was Mom's name after marriage, had helped with school plays, how she could connect with any child. It turned out Mom had left a mark on our town's theatrical life, though she'd never been officially connected to the local theater. Teachers remembered how she consulted them before school productions. Parents told how she'd prepared their children for performances. We decided to put on The Glass Menagerie by Tennessee Williams, the same play Mom had performed in New York. This was a symbolic tribute to her memory. During rehearsals, I understood more and more what it meant to be an actor, how hard it was to bare your soul to strangers each time, how painful it was to experience others' emotions as if they were your own, how difficult to find balance between sincerity and technique. Now I understood why after Michael's death, Mom couldn't continue acting. Acting work requires complete emotional dedication, and Mom simply had no strength left for others' experiences. All emotions went to her own pain. Our show's premiere was in February. The hall of our local cultural center was packed. Not just relatives and friends of actors came, but theater lovers from neighboring towns too. The performance went very well. Audiences cried during tragic scenes, applauded long at the end. After the show, an elderly woman approached me who turned out to be Mom's former colleague from the library. She said the production reminded her of how Mom prepared children's parties at the library. The same attention to detail, the same ability to create atmosphere, the same talent for finding magic in simple things. That evening, I understood that Mom had gotten exactly what she wanted, not fame and critical recognition, but the opportunity to give people joy and beauty. She did this every day, at the library, at home, at school, helping neighbors prepare children's parties. Maybe she didn't have a big stage, but she had a big, loving audience. People who valued her, not for professional achievements, but for kindness, wisdom, ability to make life a little more beautiful. After the premiere, I went home and for the first time in many years put on Mom's emerald necklace. It was heavy, beautiful, with some special energy. Looking at myself in the mirror, I imagined Mom in this necklace on a New York stage, young, talented, full of hope. But then I thought about the other Mom, the one who read me fairy tales, taught me to be kind, supported me in all my endeavors, the one who chose simple family happiness over complex artistic fame. And I understood that both these women were equally beautiful. The young actress with burning eyes and the mature mother with a wise smile, both were part of my mom, and I'm proud of both. Now I continue working with local theater. We put on shows for children and adults, organize creative evenings, invite young actors from big cities to show their work. It's a small theater in this small town, but it's very important to our community. Every time before a show begins, I think about Mom, how she found strength to start a new life after tragedy, how she managed to preserve her talent and kindness despite pain, how she built a happy family on the ruins of a broken dream. David Harris's camera now occupies a place of honor in my home. Sometimes I pick up the camera and think about the strange chain of events that led to discovering Mom's secret. If the old photographer hadn't died, if his daughter hadn't decided to sell things from storage, if I hadn't stopped by that sale that particular morning, if I hadn't given in to curiosity and developed the film, I would never have learned the truth. But maybe it was meant to be. Maybe Mom wanted me to learn about her past exactly when I was ready to understand and accept it. Not in childhood, when it might have frightened or confused me. Not in youth, when I was too selfish to appreciate Mom's sacrifice. But in adulthood, when I could understand the depth of her choice and strength of her character. Recently, I received a letter from Martha Velasquez in New York. She wrote that several former actors from their 80s theater group were organizing an evening of remembrance for those no longer with them. Martha wanted to include memories of Mom in the program and asked my permission. I agreed. Let the theater world know that Lynn Connor lived a long and happy life, that she didn't disappear without a trace, but found another way to give people beauty, that her talent didn't vanish, but just took a different form, more modest, but no less important. For the memorial evening, I wrote a short letter about Mom. I told about what a wonderful mother and wife she had been, how she used her acting talent in daily life, turning ordinary moments into small celebrations, how she taught me to see beauty in simple things. Martha read my letter during the memorial evening. Then she sent me photos from the event and told me many cried listening to the story of Lynn Connor's second life. One elderly director said after the reading, "Perhaps Lynn made the right choice. Theater can give fame, but only family gives true immortality. Her daughter continues her work, and that's beautiful." These words made me think about what real success is. Mom could have become a famous actress, but her name would have been forgotten in a few decades. But what she did for me, for Dad, for all the people she touched in our town, that will remain forever. I often think about whether Mom regretted her choice. Was she sometimes sad that she didn't become a Broadway star? Did the question, "what if," ever torment her? I think sometimes it did, especially in the first years after moving, when the pain was still fresh and new life hadn't yet brought full satisfaction. But Dad said that over the years, Mom became increasingly calm and happy, especially when I was born. Dad says motherhood transformed Mom completely. She found a new purpose, new meaning in life. Her artistic abilities found application in creating a magical childhood world for me. And you know what? I think Mom was a brilliant actress, precisely because she became a wonderful mother. The main role of her life was being my mom, and she played it flawlessly, with complete dedication, for 30 years straight. Recently, a young woman from a neighboring town joined our theater group. She just graduated from drama school and dreams of a big career. Very talented, very ambitious, very much like Mom at that age. Looking at her, I think about the complexity of an actor's fate, about how thin the line is between success and disappointment in this profession, about how much depends on chance, on luck, on circumstances a person can't control. I don't tell this young woman Mom's story. She should go her own way without others' fears and doubts. But sometimes I catch myself praying that her dreams come true, that she doesn't learn the pain Mom experienced. And if she does learn it, that she has the strength to start over as Mom did. Every year on Mom's birthday, I put on her emerald necklace and go to the theater. Not to perform. I don't have Mom's talent. Just to sit in the auditorium and think about her. I imagine how she stood on stage in New York, young and beautiful, full of hopes and plans. How she glowed with happiness when Michael proposed. How her world collapsed when she learned of his death. But then I imagine another scene. Our home, where Mom read me fairy tales. Her face in the soft light of a table lamp. Her voice changing for each character. Her hands showing how fairies fly, where giants walk. And I understand that the second scene is no less important than the first, maybe even more important, because on the big stage, Mom performed for hundreds of strangers. But at home, she performed for me. And that performance made my childhood magical. Now, when I work with children in our theater, I try to give them the same thing Mom gave me: self-confidence, love of beauty, understanding that art can make life better. Recently, a little girl came up to me after rehearsal and said, "When I grow up, I'll be just like you. I'll help children act in theater." And I understood that Mom's legacy continues. Maybe this girl will never become a professional actress. Maybe she'll be a teacher, doctor, engineer. But there will be room in her life for beauty, for creativity, for the ability to make the world around her better. And that's important too. Mom taught me that talent isn't necessarily what makes you famous. Talent is the ability to give people joy, beauty, hope, to make their lives a little brighter and fuller. And from this perspective, Mom was the greatest actress I knew, because every day of her life, she played the role of a person who makes the world better, and she played it perfectly. Now that I know the whole truth about Mom, I look at our family photos differently. Yes, she looks modest, simple, without theatrical effects. But there's something special in her eyes. Depth of experience, wisdom of decisions made, calm of someone who knows she chose the right path. These are the eyes of a woman who went through fire and came out stronger, who lost one dream and created another, no less beautiful, who sacrificed fame for love and never regretted it once. The old camera gave me not just amazing photos of young Mom, it gave me understanding of what an extraordinary woman she was, strong enough to start life over after tragedy, wise enough to find happiness in simple things, loving enough to dedicate her talent to family. And I'm grateful to fate for that random Saturday when curiosity led me to the storage sale. For $20, I bought not just a vintage camera. I bought the key to understanding the most important person in my life. Now this knowledge has become part of me. When I work in theater, I feel Mom's presence. When I read fairy tales to children, I use her methods. When I face difficulties, I remember her strength and courage. Mom died 2 years ago, but thanks to that old camera, she became even more alive for me. Now I know not just Mom the librarian and Mom the housewife. I know Mom the actress, Mom the dreamer, Mom the fighter. And all these women in one person make up a portrait of someone I admire boundlessly. My mom, Lynn Connor, Linda Harris. A woman of many names, but one big, kind heart. The story that old camera told me has ended, but another story, my own, continues. And it will definitely have room for the beautiful inheritance Mom left me. The ability to see beauty in ordinary things, the capacity to give people joy, the strength to start over when it seems everything is lost. And most importantly, understanding that the most important roles we play aren't on stage, but in life. The role of daughter, the role of friend, the role of teacher, and maybe someday, the role of mother. And if that happens, I'll play it as inspiringly as Mom did, because now I know that's the most important role in any woman's life. My mom's story taught me that the most important roles we play aren't on the big stage, but in life. The role of loving wife, caring mother, wise friend. These roles don't bring critics applause, but they give something much more important: meaning, love, and true immortality in the memory of those we love. Mom was a great actress, precisely because she played the main role of her life, being my mom, with complete dedication, every day, for 30 years. And that was her best, most perfect role.